Hey there, I thought I'd show you around my workroom or man cave where I do most of my electronic stuff, and give you a quick overview of the tools I use. I know a lot of other people have their preferences, and this is just what works for me. Okay, so number one, a lot of drawers. I like to keep a lot of spares so I can just make stuff on the fly when I need to. I always hate waiting for things. Especially if you're in a hurry, you tend to have to order it from the US, which can be more expensive. So I like to basically order pretty much everything I like from China, and it's generally so cheap that I can build up a pretty big stock of things. And whenever I need something, I usually have it somewhere in a drawer somewhere. As you see, I'm not one of those super neat, tidy people. Well, let me just talk you through the stuff I use most of all the time, and is kind of essential. So again, you know, your mileage may vary. Things I love. I love this thing, soldering station. This is a pretty cheap Chinese clone. I use the hot air quite a lot. I use the soldering iron constantly. I use a pretty fine tip on this one. There's a couple of different things for keeping the tip clean. I used to use this a lot. This is really effective, but I believe now that this is actually corroding my tips more, and I'm getting through more solder tips. Maybe not, but I've pretty much gone back to the sponge pad now. Although I do recommend picking one of these up. It's pretty magical. I always keep a lot of hook-up test clips kicking around, ready for use. Like I said, use this thing all the time. Now I can't be bothered to just change tips when I've got a very, very small tip on there. It's not much good for doing heavier, juicy stuff. This is more for SMT. So I've just recently scored another soldering iron just so I can keep a fat tip on that one and have that ready to go. I mean, they're cheap, so you know, what the hell. Also, of course, if your soldering iron breaks, you're screwed, so why not have two? In fact, I have a bunch, but I like those too. I mean, I have all this kind of stuff too. These big clunky ones, but I like temperature controlled ones are way better. Other things I absolutely love. This thing. Oh yes, I used to use these kind of, you know, cheap handy clip things, but the thing is the clips never quite hold things the way you want them to, and they don't grip very well, so stuff falls off. That sucks. This is from Harbor Freight, and it's absolutely marvelous. It's got nice soft grip teeth. You can adjust it. It's a bit hard to do with one hand, but you can adjust it in all different ways. Like that. It's marvelous. Use that constantly. It's my new go-to for holding things. Now these things I use so much I might actually have to take them off because I'm wearing them right now. Head magnifier. These are pretty standard. They're cheap. I must have 5 or 6 of these. I'm wearing this pretty much all day long. I love these things. Now, I recently got a microscope as well, which is a Amscope. What is it? Amscope SE400Z. Just got this the other day. It's really nice. It's very, very good value. It's like under 200 bucks. I've just started using this. I really like it. However, I find I can't beat these because they're just so convenient. They're always there. You know, they're wherever you look. There you go. But this thing is very nice. It has has big working distance. This is about 9 inches or something crazy like that. So plenty of room to get under there. The light's pretty good. This I just picked up off Amazon, like 15 bucks or something. PCB holder, marvelous. Primarily because let me unscrew it, but it lets you flip the ball over, which is fantastic. I love that for holding things. That and the vise are both marvelous. All obviously, you know, pretty close at hand. These things are pretty great. I guess I don't use it as much as I used to, but for desoldering through-hole components, it's marvelous. You should definitely have one of these. They're like, you know, a couple of bucks. Often when I'm doing thicker kind of wiring, like, you know, this kind of copper, I added some copper buses on this because I was putting quite a lot of current through it. Now this kind of wire, this kind of soldering here, this is a bit hard to do with a regular soldering iron because, you know, you've got a lot of copper attached and everything. So I use this, which is a very inexpensive butane. It's basically a little, you know, mini jet torch thing, but it has a soldering iron attachment on the end. And this really pumps out the heat. It's pretty good. Nowadays, I pretty much go for flame or flame powered when I want to really get some stuff moving. Now this, you want one of these. Oh yes, you do. Fantastic. I mean, you use it with one hand. It has infinite amounts of power. You can do big, fat, like XT90 type RC connectors with it. You can do whatever you want. I mean, it can set some stuff on fire sometimes, but that's part of the fun. But this is never out of reach. What else do I love? You can't. These are okay. These wire strippers, they're okay. They tend to break after a bit of use, but they save so much time and they save your fingernails, so that's always nice. I got some better ones recently, which I can't find right now, but these are very handy to have around the shop. Obviously, you need a good set of, you know, pliers and cutters and stuff like that. Flash cutters always good. All this stuff is all, everything that you can see lying around here is all like the stuff I use a lot because it's right within reach. I'm a big fan of this stuff, Kester No Flux, No Clean Flux. I've got other sorts of flux, but I just start to stick it on everything now, just a quick squirt, and it is great. You want to set several pairs of tweezers. I would recommend getting a set of different ones because, you know, you lose them and they're just handy to have and they're cheap. You definitely want one of these kind of like screwdriver tip sets, which come with security tips and everything else like that. In fact, so much so that I've got a bunch of them stacked up just in case. In terms of what other tools do I use a lot? Oh yes, the multimeter. Now, I splashed out on this one. I got this is a Fluke 287, which is very nice because it actually it can record stuff as well, draw your graphs and stuff. It has a PC interface that I've not got around to using. But I love this multimeter. I use it all the time. I've used cheaper ones. This one is great. High accuracy, easy to use. The graphing thing is actually surprisingly useful for stuff. This was maybe $300, but I have to say it was well worth it. I have a bunch of other ones, but that's the one I use this one all the time. Obviously, the hot glue gun. Can't go wrong with the hot glue gun. Now, I recommend getting high temperature glue sticks. They get a bit gunky, but they work. You can get ones with low temperature and high temperature sticks, but the high temperature sticks just work that much better. Obviously, when I'm prototyping stuff, Ziploc bags, there you go, I get through thousands of them. But these kind of jumper wires, you know, you can get male and female jumper wires. I have a big collection here. I'm always using those for prototyping stuff together with breadboards and things. You can also get, you know, nice bigger ones with ribbon cable style, very useful. Coloured is great, obviously, all the little test probes. The grey test probes are way better, I have to say. These coloured ones are pretty junky, they come off easily. The grey ones, I think, are proper branded something or other, and I like those a lot, they don't come off so much. It's very frustrating when they pop off when you're doing stuff. This is very useful, I have to say. It's like a kind of Dremel clone, it's just a 110 volt thing. It's got plenty of oomph. I almost always just have a diamond cutting bit on it. Every time you want something trimmed down, go for it. Fantastic. Let's see, what else do I use? Wire. Oh, yes, wire. Now, I used to use more of... I really switched this up recently, actually. I used to use, let me see, wire collection. This kind of solid core stuff. Very thin solid core. It's okay. It's very fragile. Obviously, it doesn't carry much current, but a lot of the stuff I do is low power. But recently I've started doing more and more sort of high current stuff, like 10 amps, 20 amps, that kind of thing. And I experimented with using, you know, thicker kind of like a lampshade wire and stuff. What have we got? I've got some around it somewhere. Basically it's PVC coated, this stuff, basically. It's very cheap. It's basically speaker wire. And it's okay, it's stranded copper, you know, it's alright. But you know what I don't like about this is the insulation is really stiff. So it's very hard to make it work around corners. I mean, it's just not that much fun to work with. Also, it's not as high current as you would think. You can get various different sizes of that. It is very inexpensive, so I have a real kicking around anyway. But I've completely switched over now to silicone coated wire, which I absolutely love. So much so that I have all sorts of different sizes. You can get this. I buy this from Hobby King, which is great, but it's very cheap, and they do all sorts of colours. And this is what is this? 12 gauge, I think. I have all sorts of different gauges here. This is just my kind of go-to, and then I use a lot of 16 and 18 gauge, 14, 16, 18 gauge. So I buy it in longer strips. This stuff, you can't buy this from Hobby King because they chop everything into 1 meter lengths, which drive me nuts. So this is if you buy 3 meters from Hobby King, you will get 3 of these, which really sucks because if you need more than a meter, then you're out of luck. And if you need less than a meter, then you have all these offcuts, which is really annoying. I would much rather have it as one long strip, one long run rather of wire. Lighted magnifier. I kind of didn't use this as much. I don't use this as much as I thought I would. I actually use it more for lighting because it's hard to get in the sweet spot It's not binocular, so you don't really, the depth perception is not quite right. You kind of almost have to squint through one eye. And I have to say, I use Hag magnifiers much more. They're so convenient, you know, you can look everywhere. And then if they're not cutting it, I'd probably go to the microscope now. But yeah, silicone wire, I just use it for everything now. I do so much of this stuff. Gauges, even the fine gauge stuff. This is 22 gauge, very useful, incredibly flexible, really high quality wire. I'd super recommend it, well worth the money. What else do I have that I use all the time? I mean, obviously, you know, stuff like sticky tape, all that kind of thing that you would just have. In terms of components, oh yes, this. I used to have, well, I still do have, an old analog scope down here, which I got for like 99 bucks on eBay. It's okay, but frankly, it's been completely replaced by a Rigol. This is just a regular Rigol DS1052E. Sorry about the shakiness. I use this all the time as well. Very good scope. I mean, it's not, you know, it's not fancy, but it's for all the stuff I need, it works really well. I love the storage. It's got, you know, infinite persistence. You can, it's just super useful. Use it all the time. Very highly recommend that thing. Obviously, I hacked it like most people do to get double the bandwidth, but it does 100 megahertz analog, 1 gigasample a second. It's extremely worth the money. Very great piece of kit. Let's see, calipers. These are super worth having as well. I mean, I highly recommend picking up all this stuff. You can, you know, a few $100 basically will get you all of this stuff. Very useful. These slightly broke, but I fixed them up. Now, while you're ordering stuff from Harbor Freight, and like I say, I most highly recommend this. It's cheap and marvelous. Harbor Freight actually sells a surprising amount of useful bits and pieces in very cheap packs. So, you know, I love having assortment packs of things because, you know, you never know when you're going to need something or try different sizes. And like I say, I hate waiting for things to turn up, or, you know, if something breaks in the middle of the night, then, you know, it's great to have an assortment. So here's one example. I don't use these that much, but, you know, I can't remember how much this was, like $4 or $5 or something, like immensely handy. One thing they do that's really good, I use a lot of heat shrink nowadays, just for tidying things up. It's way better than using, you know, insulation tape. I've burnt through most of this pack already, or at least the small ones. I may even buy 2 of these next time. Very good. So pretty much I just go on Harbor Freight and just get, you know, a whole different set of assortments of like mechanical stuff, screws, heat shrink, that kind of thing. I like this stuff a lot. It's inexpensive, but it works really well. My wire collection, I've got a lot of heat shrink in there. I've got all the power stuff in here. This is a lot of, I've been doing more high power stuff recently using LiPos, so I have, you know, all the usual suspects in terms of battery connectors. These are XT60s and bullet connectors, and again, I find it so frustrating not to have things when I want them, and they're so inexpensive if you order them in advance, that I just, you know, will have all the standard connectors you might regularly want. It doesn't take long to build up a collection that's very useful. Fuses, I'm a big, working with LiPos, you want some fuses, you really, really do. So I have these kind of fuse holders, inline fuse holders. They're a little bulky, but they're pretty good. They're good for, you know, 20 amps or so. Different sorts. There's like, you know, these kind of other sort of fuse connectors. This is my high power drawer, really. What have I got in here? All sorts of things. Wire. A whole bunch of different kind of connectors. Obviously, I just keep everything in bags. I actually don't use my, I have some of these drawer things. I don't use them as much as you might think, because I just find, okay, I'm not very organized, but I love having stuff in Ziplocs where you can pick it up. I keep my Ziplocs roughly together, what, you know, by category, and I love being able to pick it up and just see what's in there. These are actually very useful as well. I have a good way of replenishing my stash of these, because when you're doing interconnects between boards or whatever, these are 0.1 pitch pre-made cables with, you know, bare wire ends. Very useful. Anytime you want to do something, rather than, you know, hardwiring stuff together, you just pop a 0.1 inch header on the board, and then, or if you have, you know, some of these come with suitable 0.1 inch connectors to go on them. I use these all the time. All my boards have some of this kind of stuff on. You get locking connectors and all the rest of it. You know, assortments of switches, kind of cable wrap, all that kind of stuff. Let's see. So commonly used components. I mean, I do. This is kind of an old thing, but you know, small caps, big caps, LEDs, sockets, electrolytics, FETs, and power transistors and stuff like that. Also, have like you know, all common sizes of trim pot. Always very handy to have. Trim pot's always good when you're prototyping. One thing I get through an awful lot of is buck converters. I must have. I was joking with my friend. I have like the ultimate collection of buck converters. So I've got, these are all, very, very readily available from China. These are non-synchronous buck converters, so they're a little less efficient. They use a diode for the rectification part. But as you see, it's got 3 trim pots, so that gives you constant current and constant voltage, which is very nice. In fact, these will work as battery chargers as well, which is nice. So either constant current ones or regular ones or whatever. I have so many buck converters, so look, check it out. This is my power buck converter drawer. The latest favorite is this, which I think is called a YDS812. You can get these. These are all board pulls. It mounts on a PCB like that. All the ones I get, you can get them for like $4 a piece, $3 a piece from China. These things, they all have solder on them because they've all been pulled from boards, obviously. Now these are nice. They'll do about 10 amps. Now when you get them, they are set up for 12-volt output, but just when my summers, you can get this online. You can basically drop a SMT resistor on there, on the resistor divider, and make it any voltage, any output voltage you want, which is great. You can also put if you just go on that transistor there, you can put a soft switch on there as well for soft on off. I've just got into these and I really like them. I must have 20 or 30 of these. Anytime you want, more than about 3 amps, this is what you want. Now the other good thing about these, apart from being very well heat sinked, is that they are synchronous. They don't use a diode. They use 2 FETs rather than just 1 FET, which really reduces the heat losses when you're doing relatively low output voltage at high current. Like I've been doing a lot of like 5 volts at like 10, 20 amps and stuff. These are great for that. These are my new go-to buck converter for anything big. But then you really, you got all sorts of other stuff. These are all over eBay. These things, they're okay. They do waste a lot of heat. Like you see, it's got 2 power devices on there. One of them is a power Schottky diode, which really wastes quite a lot. If you do the math, when you're outputting low voltages, a lot of it goes as heat into that, which is kind of a shame. I've got so many buck converters, just every different shape and size and flavor, and I really like these other. You can get these little micro ones now as well. I'm not going to open these up, but basically these are like thumbnail size, basically. And these are good for 2 amps or something. They're fairly flexible. I quite like them. Not super well made. The trim pots on them are a bit crappy, but basically I do a lot of 12 volt in or 5 volts in, 3.3 out, that kind of thing. So I have tons of buck converters. Love them. In terms, here's the thing that I always wished that I'd bought years before, and now I use it. It's like the first thing in my room that goes on every day, apart from the computer, which is always on, is a bench power supply. Now, you may not think you want one of these, but you really want one of these. This is an Instax one that I got, like eBay, $100 maybe. Absolutely marvelous. Use it constantly. 2 separate outputs. You can gang it together. It'll give you like up to 30 volts on each one at up to 3 amps, or you can gang them together to get either higher voltage or higher current. You can get 6 amps out of it. I use it all the time because it really saves blowing stuff up. You can, whenever you're trying out a new board, you set the current limit nice and low. Just set it to just a few milliamps, and then plug it in, see if anything's going to. Nothing. Basically, you never let the smoke out with this thing. I use this all the time. I can't believe I lived without it, and now I just use it constantly. You don't have, not necessarily this model. Of course, the other nice thing is that you can see the current consumption all the time as well. So you get voltage and current on both channels all the time. It's like having a built-in multimeter. If you don't have one of these, you are crazy. Basically, get a bench power supply, and a 2 output one is very handy. That is probably the thing I most regret not having bought earlier. Okay, what else do I use all the time? I mean, obviously, various messy things going on. I'm not one of these organized people. I keep all my obviously, USB cables, that kind of thing. I make a point of pulling the switching power supplies out of PCs and things because they are so handy and they're very efficient and they're just generally very useful things to have. What else? Let's see. In terms of what's always on my desk plugged into my computer, I love these things. This is a FTDI dual port serial thing. This is a dangerous prototypes one. And this is a FT22328, so it's USB high speed, so it'll do crazy speed. It has every pin broken out, and it'll do parallel and serial and everything basically. It's Mr. I/O. I actually just use it a lot for serial, but I almost always have one of these plugged in. Super handy. Anytime you got a UART, you got any JTAG, you got whatever you need. This is basically your boy. Let's see, what else do I use all the time? Oh yeah, things that never make it off my desk are just a simple set of a bunch of 0.1-inch headers, basically dual row, single row, 90 degrees. I get through these at a tremendous rate. I'm always putting headers on stuff. You know, test points, whatever you want, basically. With actual connectors you can make out of them. Some chip quick flux here. I've just been playing with that. It's okay. I mean, I just use the liquid stuff. Yeah, the 0.1-inch header's never far from my desk. You know, diodes, for example. These are mostly Schottky diodes. I don't really have a use for like non-Schottky ones. I always enjoy the low forward voltage part. Yeah, so mainly USB serial converters. Now, my favorite CPU. I mean, I've got a lot of CPUs. I have two drawers of embedded stuff. Just all sorts of things. I keep. This is ST Microelectronics breakout boards. These are very cheap. STM32. These are pretty nice CPU actually, and these are my new favorite, and they're very cheap. And you can get ready-made boards from China. Like we got. I got a lot of stuff in here. You can get ready-made boards which are like $4 or $5, I think, and they have a they got 64K of flash. They got lots of everything. They run fast. Got PLL. So I'm starting to use those, but I have to say, still my favorite for just throwing stuff together when I need to like knock up something quickly is the TNT 3.1. It's a lovely board. It's very small. They're not that cheap actually. They're like, you can get them from Osh Park for like $17. So not super cheap, but incredibly flexible. I mean, they've got 2 A to Ds, a couple of DACs on there, like real DACs. I think that and decent USB. I think what I most love about them though is just using the Arduino software basically. Now, I know this is poo-pooed by a lot of people, and I'm a professional programmer. I've done it for decades. It's all I've ever done really is programming. And I can use GCC and make files and all the rest of it. But man, I love the convenience. I just plug one of these things into the USB port, fire up the Arduino Sketch thing, and it's like just the lowest hassle ever. You can get something. If you need a CPU to run something or do some simple conversion or do whatever you need, it's like a 10-minute job. It's a 5-minute job. It's like a 3-minute job. It's ridiculous. It's just so quick and easy. So I keep coming back to my teensies. I have to say I do love them, and they are, as described, very small. They're teeny. I do blow them up occasionally, so I have to buy new ones. It's always my fault. But I mean, it's tiny. It's smaller than my thumb, basically. And it has everything you need on there. It's such a nice CPU. Fast too. I mean, you can run a thing at 100 megahertz, so you're all good. 100 megahertz ARM, very nice. I don't actually use Atmel Arduinos at all anymore. I just 8-bit stuff. It's just I can't be bothered with it. When you look at the performance difference between an ARM, a Cortex M4 or whatever it is on the ear with like a ton of flash and a ton of RAM and 100 MIPS or whatever you can get out of it and all proper peripherals, I can't see myself bothering with Atmel-based Arduinos. I mean, I used to like Atmels, but 32-bit ARM is the way. No point in messing around. So much other stuff here. One thing I like, I don't use it that often, but if you want to get a lot of data out of a computer quickly, there's another one as well. I haven't really played with these yet, but these are so cheap you couldn't not. The Cypress PSOC. I think these are $4 each or something, so I just got a bunch. That looks like a pretty handy chip, actually. I think it's an M4 and M0 or something. It's an ARM anyway. All nicely broken out. I haven't really, and it comes with a little programming header that you can snap off. Haven't really bothered with these yet because I just keep going back to Teensy every time I want something. Because when I want something, I want it quick. It's all about just putting stuff together quickly. I'm not interested in playing stuff for the sake of playing with it generally. What else do we like? Oh, and I have all sorts of stuff in here, like this is Atmega-based smart cards and older ARM-based things and all sorts of things. What was I going to say? Yeah, the FX, the Cypress FX2, right, which is a very simple. I'm not sure if we've got one here. I should have one around. Anyway, the Cypress FX2 is basically just a high-speed USB to parallel chip. And you can program it as well. It's pretty limited programmability, but that's not really the point. The point is that you plug one end into a PC and you plug the other end into whatever you want, and you can get, on Linux, I managed to get almost 40 megabytes a second over it when writing, which is marvelous. Like, great performance. If you want anything more than low-speed USB, I basically go for the FX2. The FX2 boards are very cheap as well. I'm not very organised here, but when I'm not using hot glue, which is almost all the time, if something's going to get hot, for example, I use a 5-minute epoxy, sometimes some, super glue, that kind of thing. crimping tools, somewhat handy. I don't know, this is stuff that's in here is almost by definition not used as much, because if it was used all the time, it'd be on my desk. Always handy to have some thermal paste. My collection of many sorts of tweezers. Can't really be without the tweezers when you need them. It's not really being very focused here, but yeah, I mean, that's kind of it. I mean, most of all, I would say that you want one of those. You definitely want a bench power supply, you really do. Like, it doesn't have to be a fancy one like this. These are several $100 new, but you can get one for 50, 60 bucks or something. But you want a bench power supply. You want a decent multimeter. I highly recommend splashing the money on one of these. They're like $300 or $400 now, something like $350 or something. Really, really useful. I mean, there's many cases there's many cases where the multimeter just isn't going to do it for you, and the scope is what you need. And this, I have to say, I've used fancier scopes, and some of my friends are like, "Oh yeah, it's not very good," but I'm like, it's good enough for everything you need around the house. Head magnifier, tweezers, all that kind of stuff. Like I say, use this all the time. Oh, also, check this out. Another firm favourite. Resistor assortment. Okay, so this is Joe Knows Electronics. You can just Google it. And this is through-hole stuff, but it's really nicely done. I use this constantly. It's got all nicely labelled, every single one. It's got so many, all the different sizes you would ever really need. This is never. If I lost this, I would be very unhappy, because I just use it all the time. I just order another one straight away. There's a similar one for capacitors I've got as well, for through-hole caps, which I don't use quite as much as this. Now, of course, now that we're not really in the era of through-hole anymore, similar deal from China. These are 0402s. I can't remember how much this was. It wasn't much. It was maybe 20 bucks or something. Immensely useful. I've started using this a lot now. This has every standard 0402 resistor size. I've been using that. I use it a lot. That's why I keep them together, basically. Through-hole and SMT resistors. Also, pretty good selection of like electrolytic caps. Although you don't need that many sizes of electrolytic, because they're mostly smoothing. But I've got Louis SR. Another, couple of. And of course, you don't just want to buy one or two of these. It doesn't make a lot of difference if you get like 30 or something. So I'll often buy 20 or 30 of all the common sizes, or commonly useful sizes. Constantly using those. And then really a lot of the rest of this stuff is all esoteric things that I don't use so much. Handy to have, but frankly not. Yeah, obviously the isopropyl alcohol, cotton bud just for cleaning stuff up. Use that a fair bit. Cooker clock, not actually a hard requirement. Obviously computer. I am a 4-monitor kind of guy. I like that. I wouldn't buy a desktop anymore, but I managed to find a laptop. This is a couple of years old, but it's a laptop that has 3 separate monitor outputs. So once you get to 4 monitors, can't go back. Personally, as well as for programming, I pretty much text editor on this one, shells on this one, web on this one, other stuff on this one, basically. But the vertical, the portrait monitor, I could never go back to using a landscape monitor for coding now. It seems all wrong. The portrait monitor is just perfect for it. I run Windows as a base OS, but I use VMware. I'm always constantly running at least one VM, Linux VM. I tend to use Debian, but whatever. So what I do is I have a Samba file share, so pretty much most of my actual work is done on Linux on the VM with an SMB file share, which just appears as a map drive. So I'm editing on Windows, but every time I hit save, it goes straight onto the Linux VM, and then I run got a bunch of shells open, and that's pretty much how it works. So that's my preferred way of working. I'm not a Mac person, but because honestly, I don't really use that much of Windows. I mean, like most people nowadays, I'm in a browser all the time. So I'm either in a browser, I use in a text editor, or in SSH basically. Other final tool. Oh yes, Logic Analyzer. You want one of these. Now, shame on me. I got clone devices because I'm cheap. Now everyone has their favorite. This is a clone of a. What is it? However you pronounce it. Cele. These guys are in the Bay Area. This is their. This is not their newest one. But this is pretty nice. The software on this one's really. I mean, this is not the original one. Obviously, it's a clone. The software on this is very nice. What's nice about it is that it, specifically about this one, doesn't go that fast because it doesn't really have any buffering inside. This is basically an FX2, a Cypress FX2 USB chip, which does about 25 megasecond read, and it's pretty much unbuffered. So if your USB is not, if it glitches for just a second, you can lose data. But what it can do, of course, is stream continuously. So it's kind of like infinite amount of sampling with this. Also, the software is very nice. It has, nice. It can interpret, UARTs and I2C and I2S and all that stuff. So I like that. This is more recent acquisition. I use this a fair bit. I use it more for lower speed stuff and when I want long capture times and I want to have the nice software. But I have to say my favorite, which is here underneath an FTDI board, because basically the combination of a logic analyzer plus a dual port UART is just what you need for an awful lot of hardware debugging stuff. But this is a clone of a logic port. I won't peel it off, but anyway. Now, this thing, the software's not quite so nice, but it will go up to 300 megahertz. It doesn't sample much. It has very short sampling memory. But it's just what you need for a lot of stuff. It's really like halfway between a scope and the SLA, which is not very fast. But I have to say the logic port I use all the time as well. It's my preferred logic analyzer. This also has a variable threshold as well, so you can program it in software to go down to like 1.8 volts, 1.2 volts, which is very nice. That's missing a lot of logic analyzers, so I highly recommend the logic port, even though it's rather old and the software is a little clunky compared to modern stuff. But that's probably my go-to logic analyzer. I use that all the time. I must be running out of things now. Yeah, I mean, coffee, obviously. General household tools, scalpels, that kind of thing. Basically, that's it. That's what works for me. I love it. I have to say I'm not really missing much. Probably the best thing I got recently is this scope, which that's not a very good picture, but you can see what's going on. I probably should have got this microscope a while ago because it's pretty invaluable for doing small fine pitch SMT stuff. That's it really, and as you see, I don't keep stuff very neat and tidy. Well, thanks for watching. I hope that was useful. Enjoy.